what we're going to cover today is a transaction management piece of our software. And Brokerment is a platform that really, the meat of what we do is from contract to close. But what I'm going to be talking very specifically about are checklists and reminders, and I'm sure we all recognize the importance of those in running a successful, compliant real estate business, and one hopefully that will be in business for many years to come. Now, I don't know about you, but I have certainly felt like this when I opened up my email box. And I heard from multiple transaction coordinators, and I had emails from clients, and I had so many things going on. I felt as though my face was literally going to get blown off because I had so many requests for information, and I had to go to multiple places to figure out what was going on with an individual transaction. And whether I was, and at different times in my career, I assure you, I used Excel, I used calendars, I used everything you could imagine to try to keep my transactions going down the pipeline, wishing that I had something unified, simple to use, that I could take a look at very easily and make sure that all of my transactions were actually being handled not only in a compliant fashion, but in the same manner, so that I could guarantee that my clients were receiving the same level of service no matter where they were in the transaction life cycle, or whether it was my first transaction of the month or my fifth. And for my brokerage, at times I had upwards of 150 agents, and believe me, when you're doing 80 to 100 transactions in a month, that's what my screen looked like. Now, the basic way that most of us have done at some point is just good old-fashioned manual entry. You have the, ever popular 123 Main Street, and it's a listing, and you've taken it. And if in the back of your head, if you have one listing a month, well, it's relatively easy with one listing a month to keep track of. But transactions are kind of like kids. Two are exponentially harder than one, and once you have more than two, sanity is out the window if you're trying to do it via manual entry, because you're constantly trying to remember, when is that due? Did I take care of that? So you integrate some calendar function, but bottom line, you're still really, really working harder, and you are taking a tremendous amount of time. It is a very, very labor-intensive way to manage your transactions. And if you consider the possible costs of dropping the ball, of completing a certain task late, of missing a contingency removal, if you've ever been had delivered a notice to perform and you had no idea that you were behind on something, it is a queasy feeling, to say the least. Or worse yet, when your client actually calls you and says, hey, what's going on? I thought this was the day that blank was supposed to happen. And you or your brokerage had so many transactions, you just dropped the ball, and we all are human. Now, delayed emails. Oh my gosh. Again, communications that should go out, or when you get an email from somebody and you realize this wasn't taken care of. And then you have to, my gosh, how many of these emails have I had to write, folks, where I had to say, oh, I'm sorry, I should have let you know. Could be a cooperating broker. Geez, I should have let you know that in this transaction, blank should have happened by this date, but it did not. With Brokerment, you don't have to worry about that. Communication is streamlined, it's unified. Again, it is compliant. Missed deadlines, I mentioned it earlier, but the bottom line is that if you have to reach out to a colleague and explain that you dropped the ball somewhere, it is, of course, embarrassing. It does affect your bottom line, but it is nothing like the kind of crow you have to eat when you talk to your client and explain that you dropped the ball at some some step of the transaction, and worse yet, and I'm going to be really honest here, folks, because it's how I do business, I've actually had transactions fall out of escrow because unfortunately some ball was dropped and it gave someone an opportunity to bail on the transaction, and that is an uncomfortable conversation to have with a seller. And yes, I wish this frowny face could extend down below my screen to show you how unhappy my clients have been at times. Not often, I'll let you know. But yes, at times, because if you do a lot of transactions, if you do a lot of volume, you will eventually drop a ball unless you're utilizing brokerment. And let's face it, I'd be surprised if any of us that, of the many people that can hear my voice right now, I'd be surprised if any of you got into this business for any reason other than making money. And if you drop the ball with a client, and heaven forbid it falls out of escrow or something, you're going to have an unhappy client and you're not going to enjoy any referrals from those individuals. And there is nothing more frustrating than driving down the road, losing a listing, or even if it's months later, the listing goes away and you see someone else's sign in that front yard and you realize, wow, that happened all because of one small, simple problem. Now, brokerment has many different areas, these three being the main pillars. What we're going to talk about today is transaction management. And I will let you know we're going to be jumping into the system very quickly here. And there will be future webinars where we talk about commission tracking and reports. And we'll probably always come back to transaction management because, of course, that is the overarching umbrella of what it is that we do here. And dare I say, we do it very well. What I like to point out when I do my demonstrations for individuals that are coming over to brokerment is that our system is very customizable. What I like, and I can say this with absolute authority because I have seen just about every system there is on the market when it comes to software for real estate brokerages. What ours is above all others is customizable. We do not ask you to change your business model to work with ours. What we do is our software wraps around your business and is completely customizable to make sure that you actually get the most use out of our platform. And let's face it, what does that do? That puts money back in your pocket. If I backed up, no more unhappy clients, no more lost referrals. We help you close the transactions quickly, efficiently, in a compliant manner, and guess what? People come back. Now, this is an actual quote, and Mary is one of our biggest fans. Dare I say she's a raving fan. And we have a lot of folks like this that just came on board with us and realized whether they were switching over from a manual system using Excel and a calendar, or whether they were using a competitor's product. I've heard this before just yesterday, actually. The brokerment was like a breath of fresh air because people were actually able to get tremendous functionality in a simple, easy to use format. Does not take a master's in computer science to utilize brokerment. Now, what I'm going to do here is actually the most exciting part, which is jump into the system. What is brokerment? What does brokerment do? When you start brokerment, takes you right to the pipeline. What I'm going to do is skip those, what I normally do in a demonstration, though I will let you know that if you like a demonstration of the software, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes, and I will email you a link that you can put yourself right on my calendar, and I can show you everything that brokerment does. But to stick with what our webinar is about, I'm going to stick with checklists and transactions. Now, okay, so you go into a transaction. Now, there's two different ways to enter a transaction, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to go to an existing transaction that is already in. Oops, no, that's a closed one. That wouldn't help. Okay, oh, I see. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna go into an active transaction. I want to let you know that these here that you see in this reddish color indicate that something is behind. Now, I want to let you know that, again, this is a demo account, so it's not one that I keep up every day. I just use this for doing demonstrations. However, when you would start with BrokerMint, you're going to start off right at that pipeline, and if anything that you saw here in this color would be an issue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a transaction off of the MLS. And again, this is an option. You have the ability to have our system glean the MLS for information, for listings, excuse me, and then you can add them in this way. It always wants to know, and I hope you're getting at least, well, I hope you're taking more than, oops, sorry about that, folks. That's, okay, let me just reload that. Of course, you always have a glitch when you're doing a demo, and it really was my big giant fingers. Okay, let me just go to this one. So what we have here is you're going to add a checklist. Now you have an option here. You either have a buyer's checklist or a listing checklist, or let's just say some of you, like I did in my career, I also did property management. Under checklists, all you have to do, if let's say you're doing property management, is just that. You would add property management, and then that would become a checklist, and under that you can add tasks. So you can add, place on Craigslist, received applications, whatever it is. So I'm just pointing out that it is completely customizable. But here, let's just go back to a standard listing. The way that BrokerMint keeps you compliant is that each of these fields is completely customizable, and you can add other fields. So let's just start off with listing agreement. The way it is currently configured is that 2 calendar days after the listing date, we need to have uploaded an RPA here in California, residential purchase agreement. They might have slightly different terms around the rest of the country, but let's just call it a listing agreement. You have 2 calendar days. Well, let's say that within your brokerage, you want that to be 1 calendar day. You can do so. Let's go to a different, ordering the appraisal. Now, you can see here that you have to set how many calendar days. You want the appraisal ordered, but you're not necessarily saying, well, I want it 3 calendar days after we take the listing, because you don't necessarily know when an appraisal is actually going to be germane. So it's going to sit out there, but it's not going to show up as past due until you get to the very end of the transaction, unless you wanted to change that, and then you could simply make it 3 calendar days after listing date or what have you. This symbol next to it here just means that this has a document attached. So obviously, if you're going to install a yard sign, there's no document necessarily that goes along with that, but this actually does. So if you're going to, again, in California, we call it the AD. If you're going to show the agency disclosure, this is where you would upload it. Again, everything has a certain number of days, and that's why things show up in red. If you wanted to add a task, my example here is that in my brokerage, I used to have a welcome packet that I sent out about when we went into escrow. And you can set this up. You just type in here, welcome packet, make it 1 calendar day after acceptance, and then somebody could just click the box. Did it go out? Yes. Did it go out? No. But me as a broker, I could come back out to the overview, take a look at what's going on, and say, hey, 123 Main Street has a task that is in red. Something is behind. Really, really, and I speak from experience, helps keep you on track very simply, because I am not a detail guy. Thank God for transaction coordinators, but it's nice to be able to actually take a look at something and know what's going on. And again, if you've got 150 agents, and I used to have 80 to 100 transactions in a month, there's absolutely no way you could keep track of all that unless you're utilizing something like Brokerment. When you are in Brokerment, you have you can go back out to the pipeline. If you wanted to go into an individual transaction, let's go to a different one, and you have the opportunity to see what was done within this transaction. The reason that's great is because there's not much that happened in this one, but you could actually see, oh, so I've got 123 Main Street. What actually happened? Whoa, somebody deleted this part of a checklist. And by the way, without getting too in depth, you can set permissions for users so that people can't, delete something from their checklist. But bottom line is that it is completely, for compliance purposes, it shows you exactly what was done during a transaction. It is very, very handy because let's face it, there's been times when I want to know who touched a certain transaction and what did they do. This will tell you that. One thing that I also want to show you is that within our software, you can simply integrate your Brokerment if you utilize Google Calendar, so that when something is required, so if today is the day that I need to remove contingencies, or if today is the day that I need to, order an appraisal, it will show up right on my calendar. We do have the ability via a partner of ours that is called API Nation that does allow us the ability to work with other calendaring softwares. So again, if you'd like a demo, please let me know. We absolutely can take care of that. So back to this, and we've got probably another few moments, and then I'm going to stay on, and if anyone has questions, they can chat with me, or else I will reach out, shoot you all an email and give you the opportunity to actually get on my calendar, where I can do a more in-depth, demonstration of our software, what it is and how we do it. But this shows everything outside of the Google Calendar I just showed you. This shows everything that is actually happening within a transaction. So you have the ability to see, okay, this is everything that is due on what transaction and when it was due. So hopefully you will not have a Brokerment that looks like mine, where there are things that are past due all the way going back to the beginning of time, quite frankly, but it does show you per transactions. And again, you generally want to see what is active, but if you want to see what was, closed and canceled, if you want to say, hey, why did this transaction cancel? Maybe you can see that the documents weren't handled in the best way possible. So that is Brokerment. That is what we do. That is how we operate strictly within the area of checklists and compliance issues. So this is a great time. If anyone has any questions, I am going to be here on chat, and I will shoot out an email. You can always reach out to me after the fact. I know of the 50 or 60 people we had several that were actually current Brokerment users. And if you have any questions and want to talk to me afterwards, I will be here for that purpose, okay? Thank you very much, folks. I hope you all have an amazingly prosperous day.